The smell of freshly brewed coffee should have felt comforting, but that morning it felt like a warning. My father's kitchen looked exactly as it had when I was a child: sunlight through the blinds, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the ticking of that old grandfather clock that had outlived every family secret. "Your sister Olivia is uncomfortable with all the attention you're getting." The words fell like glass on tile.
Sharp.
Irreversible. I froze, my hands wrapped around a mug that suddenly felt too heavy. "What are you saying, Dad?" Donald Hamilton didn't look up. He adjusted his glasses, focusing on the folded napkin in front of him, as if it held the answers to every question he couldn't face. "I've been thinking about the wedding," he said finally. "And I don't think I should walk you down the aisle." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. The words didn't compute, not after months of planning, fittings, guest lists, and late-night talks about music and vows. "You don't think you should?"
He sighed.
"Olivia feels like she's being overshadowed. It's her first time being maid of honor. She's emotional." I almost laughed. Emotional? The girl who turned birthdays into competitions and thank you notes into drama? "You're serious," I whispered. He nodded, and something in me snapped, quietly, like a bone you don't realize is broken until you try to stand on it. "All right," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "If you're worried about Olivia's comfort, you don't have to walk me down the aisle." Donald looked up, startled, as if I'd stolen the script he thought I'd follow. Begging, crying, trying to fix it. But I didn't. In that silence, I saw my entire childhood replay: the empty bleachers at my recitals, the excuses, the way Olivia's tears always rewrote the ending in her favor. Something inside me hardened. "I hope she feels comfortable, Dad," I said. "You've spent your whole life making sure she does." He frowned, his jaw tightening. "You're being dramatic, Charlotte." "Maybe, but not wrong." When I left that house, the sunlight was too bright, the October air too sharp. My reflection in the car window looked composed, but inside, something vast and aching had settled, the kind of pain that doesn't scream, it decides. And I decided one thing: if my father didn't want to walk me down the aisle, I knew exactly who would. Theodore Hamilton was 82 years old, and still sharper than the knives he'd taught me to cook with. His room smelled faintly of cedar and old books, the same scent that had filled my childhood whenever nightmares woke me at 3 a.m. "Come in, sweetheart," he called when I knocked. He was reading again, Churchill, naturally. His eyes lit up when he saw me, and for the first time that day, I felt safe. "Grandpa," I began, settling on the ottoman by his chair, "I need to ask you something important." He lowered his book. "That sounds serious." "It is." I hesitated, the lump in my throat pressing hard. "Would you walk me down the aisle?" He blinked, stunned. "I thought your father, he decided not to," I interrupted softly. Olivia's feelings come first, as usual. Theodore's expression darkened. I'd seen that look only once before, when Donald forgot my mother's memorial one year. "That boy," he muttered, not unkindly, but with the weight of decades behind it. "Grandpa," I said, my voice trembling, "you've been more of a father to me than he ever was. You taught me how to ride a bike. You came to every graduation, every promotion dinner. You never missed a single moment. Will you do me the honor?" His eyes filled before he could answer. "Charlotte," he whispered, voice breaking, "it would be the greatest honor of my life." And just like that, the ache inside me shifted. Not gone, but transformed. The next few days passed in a blur of planning and whispered gossip. Word traveled fast in the Hamilton family. Aunt Patricia called to say she was proud of me for finally standing up for myself. Olivia texted 3 words: "You're destroying everything." But I wasn't destroying anything. I was reclaiming it. Each evening, Grandpa and I rehearsed our walk. He'd traded his cane for a polished walnut stick, his father's. "Steadier than me," he joked. He practiced each step as though the world were watching, though he only cared that I would. And I realized something as I watched him move carefully across the living room carpet. Love, when it's real, never needs to be announced. It shows itself quietly, consistently, in the steady hand that's always there when you reach out. 3 nights before the wedding, Olivia called again. Her voice was brittle, sharp. You really think humiliating Dad is the right way to start your marriage? This isn't about humiliation, I said evenly. It's about truth. It's always about you, Charlotte. Ever since we were kids. I laughed quietly. That's rich coming from the girl who cried until she got my birthday trip canceled. Dad was trying to make it fair. Fair. My voice cracked despite my effort to stay calm. Fair would have been him showing up for both of us. Silence. For a second, I almost softened, almost. But then she said it. You're pathetic. You need everyone to see how much Dad hurt you. You just can't move on. Something inside me cooled completely. No, Olivia. I just stopped pretending that being hurt was normal. The line went dead. When I turned, Theodore stood in the doorway, his face solemn. You did the right thing, sweetheart. Then why does it still feel like losing? He walked closer, placing a trembling hand on my shoulder. Because you loved them. You wanted them to be better. But you can't wait forever for people to grow into the love you deserve. His words sank deep, like a prayer you don't realize you've been waiting to hear. The next day, Reverend Matthews met with us at St. Michael's. How should I introduce the person walking you down the aisle? He asked. I hesitated, then smiled at Theodore. Say his name, and say he raised me with unconditional love. Reverend Matthews's eyes softened. That's beautiful. That night, I lay awake listening to rain against my window, feeling both nervous and steady. The storm outside mirrored the storm within, messy, necessary cleansing. Somewhere between the thunderclaps, I whispered, You'll see, Mom. I finally chose the right man to walk beside me. The morning of my wedding dawned bright and cloudless. The kind of light that forgives nothing. I stood in front of the mirror in my childhood bedroom, lace veil cascading over my shoulders. Behind me, Theodore adjusted his tie, the navy suit crisp, his posture proud. You look just like your mother, he said softly. Except braver. My throat tightened. You sure you're ready for this walk? I've been ready since the day your father forgot your first recital, he said with a wink. We laughed, but my heart fluttered with nerves. Outside, guests began to arrive, cars lining the church lot like dominoes of expectation. I saw Donald's car pull in. My breath caught. He entered the church like a man carrying invisible weight. Our eyes met briefly across the hall. He looked smaller somehow, unsure. I turned away before guilt could root itself. In the bridal room, Jessica pinned my hair and whispered, You okay? I'm good, I said.
And I meant it.
When the music began, the world blurred into rhythm. Piano notes, the rustle of fabric, the creak of the church doors opening. Ready, my dear? Theodore asked. Ready, I breathed. The doors swung open, and sunlight poured in, blinding, holy. Every head turned. Every camera lifted. But all I saw was the aisle, lined with faces that had watched me grow up, and at the end, James, my soon-to-be husband, eyes wet with awe. And beside me, steady as ever, the man who had raised me. Who gives this woman to be married to this man? Reverend Matthews asked. Theodore's hand trembled slightly on mine, but his voice carried clear as a bell. Her grandmother Margaret and I do, he said, with all our love and blessing. Applause rippled softly through the pews. Donald's face drained of color. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, her jaw set. The truth had been spoken, not in anger, not in vengeance, but in love. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. I remember James's trembling hands as he slid the ring on my finger, Theodore's proud smile when we kissed, the hush that fell as we walked back down the aisle, this time not as daughter and grandfather, but as two people who had finally received the recognition they'd always deserved. At the reception, Theodore sat in the father of the bride's place at the head table. Donald sat 3 rows away, avoiding eye contact. Guests whispered, but the whispers were kind. It's beautiful what she did, someone said. That man raised her. He earned it. When it came time for speeches, I stood, microphone in hand, and turned to Theodore. "You've been my rock," I said. "My teacher. My biggest supporter. You taught me that family isn't about titles, it's about consistency. You showed me what unconditional love looks like. Thank you for being the father I needed when I needed one." The room erupted in applause. Theodore's eyes shimmered with tears. Donald looked down, unmoving. Later, during the dance, Theodore held me close, careful, and steady. The song was slow, the moment eternal. "You did it, my dear," he whispered. "You honored love, not pride." I smiled.
You did, Grandpa.
"You always did." When the music ended, I glanced toward Donald. He sat alone watching. After a pause, he stood and approached, hesitant, older somehow. "Charlotte," he said, voice small, "I made a mistake." "I know," I said. I thought I was doing right by Olivia." "You weren't," I said gently. "But thank you for finally realizing it." We stood there in silence, two people who had finally run out of excuses. Then I turned away and rejoined my guests, the weight of closure replacing the weight of pain. Months later, as I flipped through wedding photos, I stopped at one. Me and Theodore, halfway down the aisle, sunlight catching in his silver hair. Both of us smiling. That picture didn't look like revenge. It looked like love that had survived everything. Sometimes, the sweetest justice isn't in taking back what you lost. It's in honoring who never let you go. Fade out.